Hi students, welcome to lesson 43, Social Exchange Perspectives. Introduction. Social exchange theory is a model for interpreting society as a series of interactions between people that are based on estimates of rewards and punishments. According to this view, our interactions are determined by the rewards or punishments that we expect to receive from others, which we evaluate using a cost-benefit analysis model, whether consciously or subconsciously. Objectives. After completion of this lesson, you will be able to understand the social exchange perspective, the contributions of George C. Homans and the contributions of Peter Blau. Social exchange perspective. It is proposed by the social exchange theory that social behavior is the result of an exchange process. The basic purpose of exchange theory is to maximize benefits and minimize costs. In sociology, social exchange theory is a major theoretical perspective. Social exchange theory is a two-sided process involving two actions. One is to give and the other is to receive something in return. Many psychologists consider the social exchange theory as highly individualistic. According to this theory, the individual measures all social interactions against personal gains that he achieves. All individual decisions and actions are based on self-serving motivation. The basic formula for predicting behavior is equal to reward of interaction minus cost of interaction. Rewards can come in many forms: social recognition, money, gifts, and even subtle everyday gestures like a smile, nod, or pat on the back. Punishments also come in many forms, from extremes like public humiliation, beating, or execution to subtle gestures like a raised eyebrow or a frown. Social exchange theory is a social, psychological and sociological perspective that explains social change and stability as a process of negotiated exchanges between parties. Social exchange theory posits that human relationships are formed by the use of a subjective cost-benefit analysis and the comparison of alternatives. The theory has roots in economics, psychology, and sociology. It is also used quite frequently in the business world to imply a two-sided, mutually contingent and rewarding process involving transactions or simply exchange. Social exchange theory was introduced in 1958 by the sociologist George Homans with the publication of his work Social Behavior as Exchange. He defined social exchange as the exchange of activity, tangible or intangible, and more or less rewarding or costly between at least two persons. After Homans founded the theory, other theorists continued to write about it, particularly Peter M. Blau and Richard M. Emerson, who in addition to Homans are generally thought of as the major developers of the exchange perspective within sociology. Homans' work emphasized the individual behavior of actors in interaction with one another. Although there are various models of exchange, Homans centered his studies on dyadic exchange. Levi-Strauss is recognized for contributing to the emergence of this theoretical perspective from his work on anthropology focused on systems of generalized exchange such as kinship systems and gift exchange. Simple social exchange models assume that rewards and costs drive relationship decisions. Both parties in a social exchange take responsibility for one another and depend on each other. The elements of relationship include costs, which are the elements of relationship life that have negative value to a person, such as the effort put into a relationship and the negatives of a partner. Costs can be time, money, effort, etc. Rewards, which are the elements of relationship that have a positive value. Rewards can be sense of acceptance, support and companionship, etc. As with everything dealing with the social exchange theory, it has its outcome satisfaction and dependence of relationships. The social exchange perspective argues that people calculate the overall worth of a particular relationship by subtracting its cost from the rewards it provides. If worth is a positive number, it is a positive relationship. On the contrary, a negative number indicates a negative relationship. The worth of a relationship influences its outcome or whether people will continue with a relationship or terminate it. Positive relationships are expected to endure, whereas negative relationships will probably terminate. In a mutually beneficial exchange, each party supplies the wants of the other party at a lower cost to self than the value of the resources the other party provides. In such a model, mutual relationship satisfaction ensures relationship stability. Basic assumptions of social exchange theory. People who are involved in the interaction are rationally seeking to maximize their profits. Most gratification among humans comes from others. People have access to information about social, economic and psychological aspects of their interactions that allow them to consider the alternative, more profitable situations relative to their present situation. People are goal oriented in a freely competitive system. The exchange operates within cultural norms. Social credit is preferred over social indebtedness. The more deprived the individual feels in the terms of an act, the more the person will assign a value to it. People are rational and calculate the best possible means to compete in rewarding situations. The same is true of punishment avoidance situations. George Homans. George Caspar Homans was an American sociologist, founder of behavioral sociology and a major contributor to the social exchange theory. Homans is best known for his research in social behavior and his works The Human Group 1950, Social Behavior as Exchange 1958, Social Behavior, Its Elementary Forms 1961. Homans based his theory on behaviorism to conclude that people pursue rewards to minimize costs. The satisfactoriness of the rewards that a party gains from an exchange relationship is judged relative to some standard which may vary from party to party. Homans' theoretical propositions. Even though Homans took an individualistic approach. A major goal of his work was to explicate the micro foundations of social structures and social exchange. By studying such forms of behavior, he aspired to strengthen the informal sub-institutional basis of more complex social behavior, typically more formal and often institutionalized. According to Homans, social structures emerge from elementary forms of behavior. His vision of the underpinnings of social structure and institutional forms is linked to the actions of individuals, for example, to their responses to rewarding and punishment circumstances. Homans developed 5 key propositions that assist in structuring individuals' behavior based on rewards and costs. This set of theoretical ideas represents the core of Homans' version of social exchange theory. George Homans' 5 propositions of elementary social behavior are: the first proposition. The success proposition states that behavior that creates positive outcomes is likely to be repeated. The second proposition. The stimulus proposition believes that if an individual's behavior is rewarded in the past, the individual will continue the previous behavior. The third proposition. The value proposition believes that if the result of a behavioral action is considered valuable to the individual, it is more likely for that behavior to occur. Value here refers to the degree of reinforcement that is received from a unit of another's activity. Cost refers to the value obtainable through an alternate activity which is foregone in emitting the present activity. Profit is equal to reward minus cost. The fourth proposition, the deprivation satiation proposition, believes that if an individual has received the same reward several times, the value of that reward will diminish. The fifth proposition discusses about emotions which occur due to different reward situations. Those who receive more than they expect or do not receive anticipated punishment will be happy and will behave approvingly. In essence, for Homans, social behavior is an exchange of material and non-material, that is, symbols of approval and prestige goods. For a person engaged in exchange, what she gives may be a cost to her, just as what she gets may be a reward, and her behavior is apt to change less as profit, that is, reward less cost, increases. In other words, the more she gets, the less valuable any further unit of that value is to her, and the less often she will emit behavior reinforced by it. The cost or the reward foregone and the value of what she gives and of what she gets vary with the quantity of what she gives and gets. But persons involved in an exchange relationship also expect to receive as much reward from the other as they give to the other. That is to say, they expect there to be a fairly equitable exchange of rewards and costs between persons. George Homans calls this the rule of distributive justice and describes it like this: a man in an exchange relation with another will expect that the rewards of each man be proportional to his costs. The greater the rewards, the greater the costs, and that the net rewards or profits of each man be proportional to his investments. The greater the investments, the greater the profit. From these 5 general propositions of the elementary forms of social behavior, Homans endeavored to explain a wide range of phenomena, from conformity to competition, from status to satisfaction, and more generally, and for many sociologists more significantly, to explain the emergence and maintenance of social structures. A few years after the publication of Social Behavior in 1958, George Homans candidly admitted that he was not wholly satisfied with the clarity of the exposition of the book's thesis. Homans admitted that he had handled rather clumsily the topics of status and power. So, in 1974, he produced a revised edition of Social Behavior in which he keeps much of the substance of his main argument but tightens up the argument to make it more lucid and logical. He also adds an entire chapter on power and explains how power works. Additionally, Homans restates his general propositions and titles them as the success proposition. For all actions taken by persons, the more often a particular action of a person is rewarded, the more likely the person is to perform that action. The stimulus proposition. If in the past the occurrence of a particular stimulus or set of stimuli has been the occasion on which a person's action has been rewarded, then the more similar the present stimuli are to the past ones, the more likely the person is to perform the action or some similar action now. The value proposition. The more valuable to a person is the result of his action, the more likely he is to perform the action. The deprivation satiation proposition. The more often in the recent past a person has received a particular reward, the less valuable any further unit of that reward becomes for him. The aggression approval proposition, Part A. When a person's action does not receive the reward he expected or receives punishment he did not expect, he will be angry. He becomes more likely to perform aggressive behavior and the results of such behavior become more valuable to him. Part B. When a person's action receives reward he expected, especially a greater reward than he expected, or does not receive punishment he expected, he will be pleased. He becomes more likely to perform approving behavior and the results of such behavior become more valuable to him. The rationality proposition. In choosing between alternative actions, a person will choose that one for which, as perceived by him at the time, the value V of the result multiplied by the probability P of getting the result is greater. George Homans had strong influence on contemporary contributions of social exchange that focus on trust, commitment, effective bonds, power relations and distributive justice. Blau's social exchange theory. Peter Michael Blau was an American sociologist and theorist. Born in Vienna, Austria, he immigrated to United States in 1939. Peter Blau focused his early writings on social exchange theory more towards the economic and utilitarian perspective, whereas Homans focused on reinforcement principle, which presuppose individuals base their next social moves on past experiences. Blau's utilitarian focus encouraged the theorist to look forward, as in, what they anticipated the reward would be in regards to their next social interaction. Blau felt that if individuals focus too much on the psychological concepts within the theory, they would refrain from learning the developing aspects of social exchange. Blau emphasized technical economic analysis, whereas Homans concentrated more on the psychology of instrumental behavior. The study of the theory from the microeconomics perspective is attributed to Blau. Under his perspective, every individual is trying to maximize his wins. Blau stated that once this concept is understood, it is possible to observe social exchanges everywhere, not only in market relations but also in other social relations like friendship. Homans was an important influence on Blau's work. Blau was interested in examining the processes that guide face-to-face interaction like Homans. Blau argued that such interaction is shaped by a reciprocal exchange of rewards, both tangible and intangible like Homans. Blau maintained George Simmel's assertion that every interaction, which is a performance, a conversation, or even a romantic affair, can be understood as a form of exchange in which the participant gives the other more than he had himself possessed. Blau was interested in building a theoretical bridge that would link sociological studies of everyday interactions between individuals and studies that examined the collectivist or structural dimensions of society, such as the economic systems, political institutions, or belief systems. It rests on several assumptions about social actors and activities. Social actors engage in activities as a means of obtaining desired goals. All social activities entail some cost to the actor, such as time, energy, or resources expended. Social actors seek to economize their activities as much as possible by keeping costs below rewards. Blau wants to link theories of everyday life to theories of wider social structure to bridge the micro-macro divide. Blau points out that a person for whom another has done a favor is expected to express gratitude and return a service when the occasion arises. Exchange is conceived of as a social process of central significance in social life derived from simpler processes and then leads to more complex processes. Blau speaks about microstructures and macrostructures. Blau calls face-to-face interactions microstructures. They are structures in the sense that regulatory rules, dominance, power, legitimate control, and task divisions are all supported by the rewarding nature of the interactions based on them. Macrostructures are viewed as formal organizations, committees, bureaucracies, and the like. These larger collectivities are composed of microstructures. Blau's view of the social organization of society is one of the interconnections among these larger macrostructures. He recognizes that associations between individuals tend to become organized into complex structures, often institutionalized to perpetuate thereof organization beyond the lifespan of human beings. Blau writes elaborately on rewards. he says, rewards are the sources of positive reinforcement, including pleasures, satisfactions and gratifications. They occur on a continuum from concrete to symbolic. Blau suggested 6 types of social rewards: personal attraction, social acceptance, social approval, instrumental services, respect or prestige, and compliance or power. Rewards are also classified into intrinsic, for instance, love, affection, respect, and extrinsic rewards, for example, money, physical labor. Intrinsic rewards are those things we find pleasurable in and of them, not because they provide the means for obtaining other benefits. Extrinsic rewards are detachable from the association in which they are acquired. In other words, extrinsic benefits are derived not from another's company itself, but from the external rewards his company will provide. Here, associating with others serve as a means to a further end. Most human pleasures have their roots in social life. Similarly, much of human suffering also has its source in interaction with others. Social rewards to one person tend to entail a cost to another person. This does not mean that society is a zero-sum game, that every person must lose in equal proportion to someone else's gain, but it does imply that people do not share social profits equally. Social action can be intrinsically rewarding, but often social action depends on other considerations. For instance, social approval, social bond benefits from the society. A person who does not reciprocate is considered rude. The social sanctions evident in the face of such action demonstrate that reciprocity is expected. Blau says that there is an apparent altruism in social life. People are anxious to help others and to reciprocate the help they receive. Underneath this altruism, however, is egoism, selfishness. A basic reward that people seek is social approval, and selfish disregard for others makes it impossible to obtain this important reward. Social approval is of great significance, but its significance depends on it being genuine. Coerced praise is worthless. Costs and resources. Costs are the punishments or lost rewards. Blau suggested 3 types. Investment. Time and effort devoted to developing skills which will be used to reward others. Direct costs. Resource given to another in exchange for something else. Opportunity. Loss of rewards which would have been available elsewhere. Resources can be anything that can be transmitted through interpersonal behavior, including commodities, material or symbolic matter. For Blau, an individual is able to exercise power over others when he alone is able to supply needed rewards to them. If the others are unable to receive the benefits from another source, and if they are unable to offer rewards to the individual, they become dependent on the individual. Blau thus says power results from an unequal exchange stemming from an individual's or group's monopoly over a desired resource. Blau viewed social exchange as a process of central significance in social life and as underlying the relations between groups as well as between individuals. He focused primarily on the reciprocal exchange of extrinsic benefits and the forms of association and emergent social structures that this kind of social interaction created. According to Blau, social exchange refers to voluntary actions of individuals that are motivated by the returns they are expected to bring and typically do in fact bring from others. Social exchange, he argues, involves the principle that one person does another a favor, and while there is a general expectation of some future return, its exact nature is definitely not stipulated in advance. Peter Blau expanded on the importance of the social context to which economic and exchange principles were being applied. He noted that social exchanges differ from economic exchanges. Suppose you had given your friend the ride home without any payment or lunch. You would expect that at some point your friend would repay the favor, perhaps invite you to dinner or give you a gift at some future point. In the social exchange, some reciprocal favor of equal value would be returned. Blau also saw social rewards and social benefits as being uniquely dependent upon the personal relationships. Blau discussed how the need for advice or help leads to exchanges among members in groups and organizations. The person providing assistance, which is cost, is rewarded with respect, esteem, or some reciprocal action from the advisee. Repeated advising interactions can be the foundation of a relationship even when assistance is no longer needed. For the relationship to continue, an equitable exchange of rewards is required. Blau identifies two general functions of social exchanges. Firstly, to establish bonds of friendship, and secondly, to establish superordination over others. Social behavior often involves social exchanges where people are motivated to attain some valued reward for which they must lose something of value, which is the cost. Profits are sought in our exchanges such that rewards are greater than the costs. Lack of equity in an exchange or where others are rewarded more for the same cost we incurred is disturbing. Summary: social exchange theory suggests that social behavior is the result of an exchange process. The basic purpose of exchange theory is to maximize benefits and minimize costs. The basic formula for predicting behavior is behavior, that is profit, is equal to reward of interaction minus cost of interaction. Social exchange theory was introduced in 1958 by the sociologist George Homans with the publication of his work Social Behavior as Exchange. Homans developed 5 key propositions that assist in structuring individuals' behaviors based on rewards and costs. This set of theoretical ideas represents the core of Homans' version of social exchange theory. A few years after the publication of Social Behavior, George Homans candidly admitted that he was not wholly satisfied with the clarity of the exposition of the book's thesis. Peter Blau focused his early writings on social exchange theory more towards the economic and utilitarian perspective, whereas Homans focused on reinforcement principles which presuppose individuals base their next social move on past experiences.